Iowa's News Now Sports has your all-access pass to all things Hawkeyes. This is Eye on the Hawks, sponsored by University of Iowa Healthcare.
Welcome to our final 2023 edition of Eye on the Hawks, the Winter Storm Warning Caucus Preview edition of the podcast. Thanks for everybody for joining up here. We'll try to focus on football more than the other stuff as much as we can. Mitch Fick, Owen Sebring, Mike Howell here, putting a bow on 23 and starting to look ahead to 24 again. For everybody who first hopped on this ride back in August, thanks so much for all of it. We're over 400 followers on Twitter now, which is awesome. That's Eye on the Hawks there on that platform. Go to Iowa's News Now's YouTube page or Instagram page to follow everything else. Again, if you're watching here on YouTube, thanks so much. The visuals really help us use what I feel like is some of our strengths here on the news side of things, getting to use our highlights, sound bites, and things like that. So thanks to everybody who's been here. We'll get to your guys' experience in Orlando and flush that as quick as we can, maybe some quick reflections a week removed from the Citrus Bowl loss, but we'll focus on the positives here a week away out. Just in the last 48 hours, 2 more Hawkeyes jumping in. Still need to hear officially from Nick Jackson, but Scott Docterman leading with the reports that he will return in 24. Again, he's only been part of the program like 4 or 5 months maybe. So Nick Jackson is back. Sebastian Castro announcing on Saturday that he'll run it back. And, of course, Jamari Harris, Luke Lachey, and Jay Higgins, Jay and Luke both announcing during bowl prep that they would be back. But that is a look at where we are so far. Your initial reactions we went through before the bowl game. I think we were on the same page with all 5 of these guys that we were hopeful they would be back and leaning that way. And, well, as long as we don't talk about Cooper yet, then, yeah, we're 5 for 5. Look at us go.
Yeah, no surprise really on who's returning. I think we, even during our prediction time, said that Cooper would be a bit of a long shot. We were hopeful, but, maybe I'm still holding out hope a little bit that he's going to come back. You know what? I changed my mind. Who needs the NFL now? We can wait.
I think Nick Jackson was a little bit the biggest surprise, at least.
Well, because he didn't know.
Yeah.
I mean, he I remember. I think it was Lystico was asking him at that post Citrus Bowl practice. He's like, a week ago I thought I was done, and now I'm not. And I've been told by people who have talked to people that I all trust that even the coaches were kind of surprised that Nick decided to come back. I think just because maybe he was so far in his process of being out the door and not thinking this was a possibility. Like, what a pleasant, stunning surprise. And, yeah, pretty awesome to see.
I think we all at the end said, like, well, if he applied for it, so why wouldn't he use it?
Sure.
Same time, he's 23. I just read in Lystico's article, he turned 23 this weekend, and then he made that decision. So
Jamari Harris turned 23, before non-con was over. I think
really?
I didn't know he was that old. Because it was his birthday. Remember, he was at that presser, and he was 23. So, yeah, hey, a lot of people are 23 in their final year of college, guys. Let's just take it easy.
I would still go back.
I forget who it was that posted it. It might have been Ike Holt or somebody of that nature, but they said that Nick Jackson is, I think, 117 tackles from becoming the NCAA's all-time leader.
Like 13 or 14, something like that. I've seen a few numbers.
It was 117. I read it earlier this morning. Yeah, I also forgot who posted it, but
yeah, when you post 4 straight years of 100+ tackles, how incredible is that?
And that's super doable, obviously, if you're Nick Jackson. I mean, as we've spoken of many times, it took him a little while this year to get comfortable, feel like himself maybe in that system, but he's going to come in next year, fully comfortable in Phil Parker's system and should be getting, close to double-digit tackles, I'd imagine, every game.
I still remember asking about, I think it was maybe pre-Penn State, asking about having to spend the first 2-3 games of his Hawkeye career in pass pro so much, and just the eye roll that came from him, just already tired of it. So, yeah, he could have racked up a few more tackles had they played maybe some more run-heavy things, but Nick Jackson's number is doing just fine, and I think a lot of people excited about him getting back. So we'll hear from Nick in a little bit. I had talked to him, and we all talked to him before the Big Ten title game, and he reflected on his time. But still a couple decisions to wait on. The big one right now is Quinn Schulte, who I can't help but think he'll come back. But he's still out there. I wouldn't be shocked if we find out his decision today. Yeah. It feels like we've got one every single day. Again, academic All-Big Ten, finally made All-Big Ten honorable mention this year. Eric Gall, I get the feeling seems to be that he's done, and I think we kind of agreed with that as well. Tyler Barnes put out a tweet yesterday or 2 days ago. Yeah, here it was. Lachey, Higgins, Harris, Castro, and Jackson all coming back. Just waiting on one more, which would tell me Quinn's the one they're waiting on.
The vibe you get is that All's not the wanted.
Sure, yeah. which it's tough.
Never know for certain, but
in a year full of injuries, Eric really flashed a bunch, leading receiver for Iowa with just under 300 yards receiving. But boy, you saw the potential there, and I wonder if the injury history at Michigan and then getting so banged up this year at Wisconsin, if that plays into of just, hey, let's get up and go. But hey, while he was in black and gold, he certainly showed he can be an NFL guy.
I feel like even down in Florida, Mike and I just kind of hearing some of the rumors about who's going, who's staying. Not even from a team source or anything, but just from some other reporters. Could kind of heard that Eric All is probably not going to be coming back. I think we heard that maybe he's training with some of the same NFL preparation people as Logan Lee is going to be working with. So.
He ended the year leading in receiving yards, I believe.
The lowest in, I believe, either the Ferens or Fry era. We talked preseason about Gavante in 2013, I think, had 398, didn't break 400, 388, I think it was, and now almost 100 yards less. That's your best leading receiver, or your lowest number to lead.
Along those same lines, I've got some trivia, but I want to put it in the later half of the show when we're doing the season review. So it goes along those lines. So that's what we call a tease.
That is a tease in the business. Well, we teased Nick Jackson talking about this. I asked him, I can't remember the exact wording on the question. You hear the tail end of it here. But again, Nick Jackson graduated from Virginia in May. He maybe got to Iowa City in June. Wasn't practicing with the team, though, until August. So we're really just getting into the 5th month of Nick Jackson even being with the Hawkeyes officially. But we asked him in leading up to the Big Ten title game, just his time with the program, with Kirk Ferentz, what he had heard outside before coming in. And boy, it sure sounded like a guy that would like a little more time with the program, and now it sounds like he's going to get that.
What have you learned then in the 6-7 months that you've been here? Not even that, I don't think.
Well, I mean, I've learned that we're 10-2, so he's a winner. So, I mean, he's just a heck of a football coach. He's an even better person, honestly. So it's just one of those people you see, you get your joys, like you have happiness, and you're just thankful. I mean, every single time he talks, you listen. You're gonna learn. You're gonna learn a lot from him. His perspective is wonderful. So it's just it's an honor playing for him. It's an honor just learning from him. It's an honor watching him and just trying to emulate him.
What have you learned then?
And he gets another year to do that. Again, a guy that I think everyone had high hopes and expectations for because of his pedigree coming out of Virginia and what he did there in the ACC. Boy, in a season where, you just talk about Eric All and, what happens with Cade and they miss so much time, there may not have been a more important transfer pickup, certainly at Iowa. And
I was just going to ask,
he's as good as a transfer pickup as you could ever ask for.
Is he the best transfer? I wouldn't say transfer, well,
this
in
year
program
for
history.
Iowa, in program history?
I guess, I don't know if you knew JUCO, because Brad Banks
is
was a JUCO transfer.
Yeah. I'd say in the modern era, without a doubt, running away.
Yeah.
It's Nick Jackson. Time will still tell on guys like.
I can't think of another one who came from.
On guys like Caleb Brown and Seth and Cade certainly, but I mean, for him to come in and just immediately be, and Rusty Feth is going to get overlooked so much just because he's in the interior and you don't think about him, but he comes in as an All-MAC performer from Miami of Ohio, and all he does is show up and be an All Big Ten performer on an offensive line that needed a guy like that, and he was terrific down the stretch. Those two have. We were looking at all the flashy positions, and of course it's the linebacking core and offensive line where Iowa finds its biggest strength in the portal.
Certainly if Eric All had stayed healthy this year, I feel like he probably would have taken over that mantle. I mean, that guy was such a good tight end. He was such a good, safety valve for Deacon Hill this season, and boy, you just think what that guy could have done if he would have had a full, healthy season. I mean, again, playing half the games of anybody else and still leading the team in receiving yards. That guy is going to really make a difference in the NFL.
That is the one big what if I have in my head, just one of those tight ends if they stay healthy. I know, the offense not as good as we would hoped, obviously. But if those two tight ends stay healthy, that's a totally different look.
Sure. The glass half full, and we'll talk more about this later in the show with the 23 season review, but those injuries then are the reason why we head into 24 really high on Addison Ostrenga. he gets his opportunity. And, Zach Ortworth, who has the longest reception of anybody all year, and that's his only catch, too, was that one down to seam against.
That was his only catch, that right?
Against Rutgers. Yeah. He had a couple targets, I believe.
Yeah,
in the bowl
more
game,
targets, but.
That's next man in. It's a developmental program, and those guys, quote unquote, weren't supposed to see the field. They did, and now you feel a little bit better about certainly what Addison can do. And Zach Ortworth, a kid that a year ago was getting ready for high school graduation and all that, he's got a few more reps, and that's the stuff that pays off eventually down the line. We're going to take a quick break here. We're going to start looking towards 2024 before we Tarantino it and look back to 23 again. But listen, a lot of guys coming back, a lot to be optimistic about. We'll talk about it after the break.
Bauman's has been selling quality clothing for over 100 years. We carry a wide selection of men's and women's clothing. We recently expanded to offer a great selection of shoes and accessories. We have the area's best selection of both big and tall and can outfit anyone from the farm to the office to a casual night on the town. Bauman's is a proud family-owned business, and we're excited to continue the tradition of quality clothing and unmatched customer service since 1909. Visit us for all your clothing needs.
Okay, so we know who's back, predominantly on defense. You got one more decision to make in Quinn Schulte. And again, it wouldn't shock me if that popped up at some point here while we're on air. But we're going to start taking a look now at the 2024 depth chart, what it probably will look like going into spring. Wouldn't be surprised if there's some shifts post-spring. Again, we saw Charlie Jones a couple years ago transfer after Iowa wrapped up spring ball. That's the way of the world, and that could certainly happen here as we get into April and May in 2024. But
Would it start with offense or defense?
Let's start with offense, yeah, because nobody's talked about the offense at all. So here's our look at what things will probably look like going into 2024. You're going to have Seth Anderson, who we talked a little bit off camera. I don't remember him getting a snap last Monday. He certainly didn't have a target or a catch, which was really surprising. But I'm happy to see him on there.
So this is just what I took from the Citrus Bowl depth chart, and I
Sure.
plugged in anyone who hasn't hit the transfer portal, isn't graduating. There's some in there that, like, I put Quinn in the defense because I wasn't sure.
Yeah.
And there's talk that he might come back. So that is interesting. We hadn't talked about that at all, just because I don't know if it was just shooting the game. We hadn't noticed that at all. I know Bostic was
we've
out
talked
there.
about that. It's so tough. Like, when you're shooting a game, you're not watching the game. Because people will ask you, like, what happened here and there? Like, I don't know. I saw Deacon and Caleb in this box here and nothing else. You're more
10-yard run looks like a 2-yard run. Like sometimes when
it's
you're
so
at the
tough. Just
goal line.
Literal perspective of what you're seeing is really tough, and then a guy's running you over as you're trying to get the shot. But for those who aren't watching on YouTube, we'll run through. Quarterback Cade's year one. Hill and Linez split at 2. I wouldn't be shocked if Marco.
I almost put Linez at 2, but that was just me saying he should be the 2.
That's going to be a very interesting, and certainly, as Cade continues to rehab, I don't know if he'll be ready for the spring. I mean, he's been without crutches for a while and unwrapped. I would think in a few more months he'll be able to do something.
Yeah, I guess I think people are estimating he's not going to be ready for the spring, but you don't know for sure. And I think there was talk last week, and it didn't pan out, about Ty Thompson coming in as a visit, and then the day he was supposed to visit Iowa City on Friday, he committed to Tulane. He's the Oregon backup who backed up Bo Nix.
He was Arizona player of the year in high school, and was one of the, I think he was the number 2 dual threat quarterback in the country in that class.
I think just the thought of them trying to bring in someone makes you think that they're not satisfied, but without an offensive coordinator, I don't know how you can move forward.
Yeah.
And that job is still posted. I've been checking like every morning the last couple of days. Like, what do you guys is the smoke coming out of the Vatican? Is there a pope? Like, what do we got?
I was a little curious too when I saw that they were possibly bringing in another quarterback. I'm like, I thought that we had the quarterback situation sewn up. I mean, Cade McNamara didn't put up stellar numbers in his games that he did play, but he was still recovering and still getting used to the system. And so I still think that from everything I'd heard, they were just excited to see him at full go next year possibly. And after what they saw to Marco Linez in the Citrus Bowl, I think that they felt pretty good about what he could bring to the table next year. Deacon Hill probably getting bumped down to number 3, but yeah, still I was as intrigued as anybody about why they would be bringing in a quarterback. I mean, is this a state of college football? Do you just bring in any good player that is willing to come? Bring in as in just let them come
it's
and
like
visit?
free agency, yeah. Like, hey, like let's sit down, have a meal, have a cup of coffee or whatever. I don't know what
This is Cade's like second major injury. You can't trust, like, if you are putting all your eggs in his basket, I think you try and be like, okay, this guy's on the market. Let's bring him in. If he wants to compete for that job, it makes me think that he wanted to go somewhere where he was the clear number one. We went to Tulane, who was losing their quarterback, right?
Yeah, Malachi Nelson just did the same. He was the number one recruit out of last year's class at USC. Obviously, Miller rolls out and has that insane game in the bowl. He transfers to Boise State, where as long as he wants to be the starter there, Malachi Nelson's probably going to be the starter there on the blue turf. I do think, again, something I think we've talked about off camera. You're going to get the kid from Jacksonville, James Razor.
I think it's Razor, yeah.
As the quarterback, who can move around. He's got some speed. Jimmy Sullivan's the kid out of Fort Wayne that committed from the class of 25 a couple weeks ago. And in his picture, I don't know if you want to look this up on Twitter, if we want to show it. Usually when recruits commit, we're looking way too far and kind of getting off the depth chart here, but it's usually a picture with like Kirk and then like the coordinator that is related to that position. But in Jimmy Sullivan's shot, it was him in the middle, Kirk on the right, and Budmeyer on his left, which kind of, or on the left side of the picture, his right arm, which kind of tells me maybe Bud's the quarterback coach now, or at least was acting quarterback's coach in a recruiting situation. Yeah, right there. So I do wonder if like that's been sealed up, because I think he also was trying to get Ty Thompson to Wisconsin while he was still at Wisconsin, which is the big reason why Cade came to Iowa, because that relationship. It's why Deacon's at Iowa, because I think he committed as a sophomore, and he credit to Budmeyer for that. So I do wonder if, when it comes to like trying to find a portal quarterback and filling out the depth chart, if John's status, whatever it may be, if he's in this new role or if he's acting that new role.
You think he was acting for Brian at the time? Because
perhaps, yeah.
Kirk said that Brian wasn't recruiting, obviously.
So I wonder if but it was just because I think his official role this year is assistant to the head coach. It's like assistants to the head coach don't take pictures with recruits. I don't think. I haven't seen a whole lot of those.
First one we've seen, though.
But it does feel like, and it's something we talked about going back to the beginning of the fall, is that it feels like that's his experience. He's got a year of being an OC at Colorado State. Like, it feels like he's been set up for a bigger role, and maybe that's what we start to see. Whoever the OC is, maybe John's your QB coach. But that could certainly affect the depth chart and those relationships he has.
Seems like from what we hear, what our conversation was with David Eicholt about the OC spot, it's like his possible role as QB coach is going to depend on who the offensive coordinator is, because that could be like Brian Ferentz, where the QB coach is the same as the OC. But if not, if it ends up being Joe Philbin, he would not be a QB coach, and so then you've got a spot wide open for John Budmeyer.
As for the running back room, anybody and everybody all the time is in there, which is really cool to see. LeSean Williams coming off an all Big Ten season. Caleb Johnson, who I think at least two of us had as preseason offensive MVP, and certainly, boy, he had the home run hits against Purdue and the one that won the West against Illinois. Jazz had his game against Iowa State, and certainly he's got a skill set. It's crazy to watch how hard he runs. It's so much fun. And then Kamari Moulton and T.J. Washington, who both got in down near the goal line in that big drive in the Citrus Bowl before the interception. So they've got plenty of tread, and they've still got their red shirts too. So they're in there. I do wonder. You love seeing everything that's in the running back room, considering how Iowa wants to run the ball. They've got bodies to do it. You do wonder at the end of spring, though, if somebody's the odd man out.
I was thinking that exact same thing. They see where the pecking order is, and if they're not satisfied with it, and I'm not holding anything against these kids. No. Like, there's almost too many mouths to feed. I know at the beginning of the season they said we're all gonna eat, but 5 running backs is a lot to keep fed throughout a season.
It was very weird to me, the running back situation in the Citrus Bowl, because I feel like we could have maybe seen more of those guys, or and in that deep drive situation, they had the number 4 and 5 guys on the depth chart in there taking snaps. I mean, the running back situation was just odd to me in the Citrus Bowl. I mean, did that stick out to anybody else that maybe we could have seen more of LeSean and Caleb?
I did. I mean, my first reaction was when TJ got the hand up, like, it's TJ Washington in there.
Yeah.
Like, haven't seen you since Western Michigan, man. Or I think he's had a couple runs since then. It was just surprising because it wasn't who you were expecting, but I I mean, that's kind of the bowl game, right? Sometimes is you roll out some dudes and see if they've been, as we've always heard, if they're practicing well, like they're going to get a shot. And I wonder if that was maybe a case for like, okay, like we've got you down near the goal line. We saw what you did against a MAC team, certainly in Kamari, and what he did against Western Michigan to have a big third and fourth quarter. Like, all right, guys, like let's see what you can do here. And it was nice to see. I think, didn't TJ have like a 14-yard carry or something?
Yeah, it was.
I mean, he had a really nice run. It was awesome.
And then again, we were on the sideline, so I don't think he got another snap, did he? Or did he get?
I think he got one more.
No, a carry. I mean, did he get a carry?
I think he got one more like in that drive, but
It was a good run though.
yeah, and he's a dude. It sounds like they really like his versatility. Kamari's the smaller of the two, but I mean, hey, film don't lie. I mean, he was great against Western Michigan. Also had some long runs there as well.
I have another note about the running back room. I have not heard anything officially, and Hayden Large could come back for one more year, right?
I thought so too, but I haven't heard anything. And he wasn't. Doctorman did a rundown of the depth chart on offense, on offense, and it sounded like Rusty was your fullback. So I'm guessing Hayden's. Which again, another guy I
haven't seen that.
See more of. I'm a Hayden Large guy, but
these COVID years are screwing with me, so I never remember who has one.
So at Dort, he played 2020, which doesn't count, and then 21 and 22, and came here in 23. So theoretically, he could have one more year if he chose to. I don't think he's got lots of NFL offers coming in right now. It seems like he would want to play maybe one more year at Iowa if he has aspirations of the next level.
Do those COVID year guys count it against your scholarship?
I would think so. I mean,
because that's the other thing that if they have so many signees coming in that if they weren't expecting all 6 of these guys to come back, they would have to make room for Quinn, for a Nick Jackson, for Jay, like for Seb, and obviously you make room for them because those are your guys. But who gets the the short stick of not getting that scholarship? Which
tough spot.
I don't know how to do all that math. So
I hope Hayden comes back just because I thought he did really well, and one of those wheel routes is going to get him a touchdown if he comes back. I love seeing him get out there, playing a little tight end even as a fullback. But he also is credited a lot, Rusty, helping him learn the position. So I get the feeling Rusty Van Wetsinga could.
What a name!
That's talking about another great fullback name. I think he could step in and just be fine. So there we go.
I was looking at some game logs for at least Leishon. I was going to look at Caleb after this, but. Tennessee, he only had 6 carries. That's the fewest he had since the Penn State game. Every other game leading up, he had 9 against Michigan, and then before that it was 16, 16, 13, 24, 11. So vastly underused compared to what he had been in the last 3 or 4
I think some of that's just the game plan because they could not run the ball very effectively, and they were down by.
All right, let's look at receivers here. Seth Anderson, Caleb Brown, your ones. I don't think there's any argument there. Jacob Bostic, again, a dude I feel like I've at least been silently cheering for, and now I've talked about it a little bit more. Finally getting healthy, the kid out of Palatine, and has gotten some run with the ones. Alec Wick, great receiver from Regina, who I still have yet to see drop a ball in any sort of major competition. We'll see who else is in there in the room, but thoughts on receivers quick. A position that we're
This just needs
waiting
more
on
talent.
something. Yeah.
This needs more guys.
Jarrett
more
Bowie's
bodies.
a guy who got a lot of run with the ones too. And again, like him and Bostic, taller guys with some length.
It'd be interesting to see how they pan out. But since they weren't playing, it leads me to believe that Seth and Kayla, even though Seth didn't play that last game, like you said, But a lot of these receivers all year had struggling getting open, and again, Citrus Bowl was the same way. Tennessee did not respect the pass game, and that has to do with a lot of things, just the offense in general. But it'd be nice to see, and I don't know if it'd be possible to bring in someone in the spring, just because how do you recruit a receiver to this offense?
I mean, they got Seth in that way, but I feel like you got to bring in somebody, and heck, Caleb came in too.
True.
So I think maybe you get a guy who is in that Caleb Brown situation, who's maybe at a really big program, not getting the time though, and sees an opportunity.
I mean, Caleb, just from some of the plays that we saw him make in that Citrus Bowl, you're just like, gosh, this kid is going to be so freaking good next year. I mean, he's got such big play potential, but boy, after that, oh man, I mean, they just need such help there, and especially with Deontay Vines leaving, like they've got to get something to just provide even a little bit of depth there, because I mean, if Cade comes back and he is fully healthy, he's got to have at least a couple more options of guys to throw it to that have a little bit more experience than Alec Wick.
Or else they're just going to be bracketing Luke Lachey, and if there's only one or two guys on the outside that can beat you, we're gonna see much of the same on defense, or when we're on offense, stacking the box. Hey, beat us deep. And Cade, I think it gives us a better option to do that than Deacon, but we'll have to see how this offense progresses, and that's been like this the main line for the past 3 years.
We'll see, and you got some freshmen that are coming as well. I know we know from covering high school football, Alex Moda, a kid out of Marion that they're really excited about. Would love to see Alex continue to rise up. But offensive line, you basically get everybody back, which is great. Logan Jones is going to be your starting center. Tyler Aylesbury, though, got plenty of time, and obviously stepped in really well. A guy
that's right. He was
play all those. Nick DeYoung back, a guy who again has a ton of versatility. But you got Richmond, you got Connor Colby, you got Jennings Dunker. You lose Rusty again, who is so great. Cade Piper's the guy everybody keeps talking about, it just being an absolute beast since he's got on campus. Listen, there were ebbs and flows with the O-line, but we talked about needing experience and bringing experience back. You've got it in 24, and you've got to be at least cautiously optimistic that, hey, these guys have got a ton of time together. It's gonna gel.
I would like to see that happen next year, especially with the amount of experience we have coming back. People were a little bit low. I'm mainly just talking like fans and their disappointment in some of these guys. Just like as much as Deacon struggled in a lot of games this year. Especially in the Citrus Bowl, he just didn't have a lot of protection. He was going down a lot, and there was some struggles on that O-line keeping him healthy. Just that one sack that happened on the goal line, that was just total blown assignment by, was that DeYoung? I forget who was on that right side. I don't want to call somebody out, but somebody just like totally missed the block, and that led to that sack and the fumble. So there were some pretty big question marks, I feel like, on the O-line last year.
I also think some of that is due to the fact that this offense doesn't have a deep threat, and they don't have to back up. Like, they can go man-to-man, they can bring extra guys, and there's just no consequence for doing that.
Yeah.
At least in the air.
Yeah.
You saw, I think, that one big LeSean Williams carry. That was on a blitz, and they blocked it perfectly, and he ran it for 80 yards, and that can happen, too, when you bring some guys up. But that just goes back to, I don't think it's all in the offensive line when there's like 6 or 7 guys coming up. There are only 5 of them. I think when they have only needed to do like 5-on-5, they've looked good.
Yeah.
At least this year, that's what I've thought. But
I don't know if you guys went back and watched the broadcast, but Brock Osweiler was the color commentator on the
right?
game. Yeah, former Bronco. He kept looking. Tennessee was starting. Again, we talked about the secondary and everybody that opted out or wasn't going to be there. They had a true freshman starting, and he, for like 4 or 5 plays straight, was just like, I don't get why they don't test the receiver on the outside against that DB and just like throw one up. Mm-hmm. And it's like, well, yeah, aside from like a couple shots to Caleb or Nico a few times, like Iowa doesn't throw streaks, it doesn't feel like. And certainly just because there was so much pressure up where Deacon didn't have time, it's like, Brock, when do you want him to throw it to him? Like, he was just going off his back foot and chucking it up. There just wasn't a lot of opportunity. And again, not an offense that tends to be aggressive downfield a ton. There's been moments, certainly, and it's, again, a time where, boy, those deep balls to Nico, there was just like a step too far or something like that. Like, the opportunities were there, but yeah, another one of those that you keep looking for. So hopefully everything meshes together in 2024 for that offense. The defensive depth chart we've kind of already gone through just based on who's all coming back, and we'll hustle through it a little bit. But you're going to lose Joe Evans, you're going to lose Logan Lee, and you're going to lose Cooper DeJean on defense. But assuming everybody else is back the way it is, that's a pretty strong unit.
Let's put Brian Allen on there. He's at the end, right?
My guy Brian Allen, who wrecked that fall open scrimmage, was terrific. Herkett.
Still a pretty stacked D-line.
Yeah, Herkett missed the bowl game, but was tied coming into the bowl game, tied for the lead on the D-line with tackles, which is awesome. He had some of the biggest game-changing plays of the year. Devontae Craig really shined. Y.A. Black is terrific. Aaron Graves.
Graves was great in that bowl game.
Yeah. And then your same linebackers, Kyler Fischels are also coming back, so your entire starting linebacking core and Seb Castro are back. Deshaun Lee has all the experience he got. John Nestor might be in there fighting for playing time, too. They're really high on him. We've already talked about Cohen Enninger and what he could do. And then Xavier, all he does is stand back there and just lock things down in the safety spot. Quinn Schulte does what he does. And then Jamari coming back. and a guy in Hilson who they're really high on, who's been a great special teamer along with Nestor too.
One name that is not on here that I think is a possibility to come back, I haven't heard anything about, is Chris Reams.
Yeah.
He was a guy who
He was out there in the bowl game too, yeah.
Yep, he's a guy who had to miss some games early in the season, and I forget exactly why. I forget if it was part of the gambling thing or.
I think it was, yeah.
But anyway, he didn't exactly get the experience to have a full season. But if he comes back, good kid out of Van Meter that could solidify even more depth on the D line there.
Yeah, not much else to say. I mean, the defense you saw last year, it just loses Cooper and a couple. I mean, Joe Evans. Hey, it was awesome in the bowl game.
4 sacks, right?
From walk-on,
we didn't even talk about that.
From walk-on to the 4th most sacks in program history. Not bad for a quarterback at Ames High School. Like, what a
Ames
story.
High does aim high, though. That's what they tell you.
Just so cool. And we probably should take a little time to talk about Cooper because this kid, in really just 2 seasons, I mean, played a little bit in 21, but in 2 seasons went from small-town Iowa kid who was must-see TV as a small school, high school quarterback to a guy who's kind of a living legend.
Yeah.
And what a ride. And you had a front row seat for a lot of it.
Yeah, I mean, it's been so much fun because you just never knew what the future of Cooper was going to be, especially in high school, because as we've talked about, he was such a stud basketball player coming through high school that you were like, boy, this kid could be a D1 talent in basketball.
And that highlight reel has popped up every month. It's like, oh, by the way, Cooper's got hops.
And then when he decided to commit to football, it's like, all right, and you're a D-back, and okay, well, we'll see what you can do there at Iowa. There was not, when he committed, he was, again, there was nobody chasing Cooper DeJean when he committed. I mean, I think he maybe had an offer from Iowa and South Dakota State, maybe. Like, there were just not a lot of guys after him.
He could have been national title.
What's that?
He could have won the national title. South Dakota State won that yesterday.
A team who hasn't lost since Iowa held them without a touchdown and didn't score a touchdown and still won 7.
Yeah. So, I mean, his story has just been so much fun to watch in person because it's like, yeah, he's that kind of kid who can come out of a 1A, 2A high school and he can put up some good numbers at Iowa, but he proved to be so much more than that. He was a guy who electrified the fan base. We've talked about that punt return touchdown against Michigan State, that's one of the loudest moments in Kinnick Stadium recent memory when he scored that one touchdown, and then the touchdown that didn't count probably rivaled that as one of the loudest I've ever heard Kinnick Stadium. I mean, that place was like going to shake the earth with how much that place was bumping during the time between when it was a touchdown and when it was not a touchdown. But just a guy that, like, for a kid who played defense, somebody that Hawkeye fans are going to remember for a long time.
So fun to watch. And the only time I can remember, and I've been to a lot of games at Kinnick, fans were so angry about that, they were throwing like debris on the field, which I do not condone. Do not do that again. But I've never seen that before. But
Iowa State game last year it happened.
Oh, really? Mm-hmm. Oh, I left early, so.
Good fandom.
It was raining. It was pouring down.
Yeah, I wasn't even there, and I felt miserable.
I forget what bad call happened, but I remember there being some water bottles getting chucked on the field.
Oh, it was the fumble. The fumble that would have put Iowa at 14-3,
oh,
right?
really?
Yeah.
That was early.
I assume that was it.
Yeah.
I don't know. Again, I wasn't there, but
got to go back and look. But there was some bottles on the field. Not nearly.
If you were there and you threw something, please get in the comments. Let us know. But there's the announcement there from Cooper, and go wreck the league 3. Man, we're happy for you.
Please don't go to the Vikings or Bears.
Do what you have to.
That's
a draft.
That was the one thing that, it was such a bummer when I saw him commit to. I wanted to see him back in a Hawkeye uniform so bad next year, just for the sake of getting a chance to cover him one more time, see one more go around, see his name potentially go up on the Ring of Honor. I mean, man,
I think personally we all wanted to in the media, just because I think in the back of our minds, if he continued with the punt return, I'm like, all right, dark horse. At least people talking about it. I think it's a quarterback award, the Heisman, but I think people would have, at least here in Iowa, talked about it.
He would have been a Thorpe guy. He would have, all that, we kind of gloss over it just because we have such high expectations and lofty dreams for him. But he won defensive back and returner of the year. That's it's a creative player, man.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's so cool. And I still love that the last time he got to leave Kinnick Stadium was unfortunately on crutches, but him just beaming because his team won the West. And if you turn up the audio on the video, you hear he's pretty vocal in his excitement about the developments there.
How do you guys think he does in the NFL? I mean, obviously he's a first-round projection. I mean, is he the defensive version of Tim Dwight? Is he something more than that? I mean, what is it that he can actually do for an NFL team? Because even still, as much as we kind of keep doubting him because of his size, he is still an undersized guy for the NFL. He did not allow a touchdown this entire season with Iowa, so obviously he's doing
I
something
think he
right.
plays cornerback and becomes the first white corner in the league for to start a game
Yeah.
since Jason Sehorn.
I will not doubt Cooper DeJean until he gives me reason to do so. So whatever he wants to try and accomplish in the NFL, full faith he can pull it off.
You think he still returns punts?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's just too
The
dynamic.
team that
not
drafts
to.
him knows what's good for him. Yeah, he's going to return punts.
Although I guess
That's part of his appeal, though.
Yeah.
I mean, he's a shutdown corner who can also be explosive in special teams.
Sure.
And anybody in the NFL will tell you. I mean, that's how Amir got his foot in the door.
wonder,
He's a receiver, but he's created chaos on special teams. That's what keeps him in the league.
I wonder if anyone tries to play him on offense too. I know in college it works, but I still think he's effective with the ball. And you could I'm thinking Taysom Hill, even though he's not that big, just getting him in a sweep or something, or like
Full
a
scat
special
back then,
gadget
yeah.
player, like one or
And
two
Jarek
plays.
McKinnon. He reminds me of like
Yeah.
a Jarek McKinnon on defense.
He won't need to play as many snaps in the NFL. That is one thing that
That's
could
true.
put
He
him over.
won't.
I mean, and at Iowa, it's like he was so good that it's like they just hated to take him off the field, I think, at any point, because you know that he's going to shut his guy down. But in the NFL, at least you have a little bit of backup that you could move him around a little bit more if you want to.
Do you have a special teams depth chart by chance?
I did not
That's
make
okay.
one.
It's easy to get through. Drew Stevens, I imagine, is your kicker. Luke Elkins, your long snapper. Reese, is it Dakin or Dakin?
I'm not sure.
Talking, I
He's
think
your
is
new
what
punter.
Tori said.
And I would imagine it's still Caden Weegan returning punts. And
Yeah.
so there's your special teams depth chart. Max White, I think, was the second kick
Lost.
return guy, wasn't he?
Yes. Lost a long snapper to the transfer portal. Liam Reardon.
I saw Reardon was in there.
He's out.
I mean, Luke Elkin has made that his spot, which is awesome. He's been, again, I would be more shocked to see Torrey shank a punt than I would be, or I'd be less shocked to see Torrey shank a punt than Luke have a bad snap. He's just been outstanding.
Yeah.
I'm excited to see what Reese can do now.
Yeah, going to be good next year. I mean, it's going to be like, I feel like fans might be a little bit disappointed first just because Caden Weegan is not Cooper DeJean on punt returns, and so he might not break quite as many loose, but effective punt returner. A guy
He's shown
hold it
effective.
down.
Yeah, I mean that return against Illinois helped
Yeah.
set Iowa up, and
It
certainly
does
fun to
show
see.
though when you don't have Cooper back there, like at the bowl game, I think he let one go over his head, and we got pinned back deep. I think that led to the fumble inside, but obviously the fumble wasn't his fault. But just having an effective punt returner who can catch it and not roll an extra 10, 15 yards is so huge with this offense. When there's already like just small margins that they have to fight through.
everything affects everything.
Yeah.
That's why when people lock in on one reason for it's like, well, what happened before that? What leads to everything's connected and everything yields good and bad results. So it's all part of the flow. Let's look at the new flow of the Big Ten real quick, the 2024 schedule. You're going to open with 3 straight home games, Illinois State, Iowa State, and Troy before you hit the road for Minnesota and Ohio State. Come back home for possibly the defending national champions, at the very least the defending runners-up in Washington. Then you head to East Lansing for Michigan State. You go back home for Northwestern, Wisconsin, then head to LA to take on UCLA, and then go to Maryland, and you wrap up at home Black Friday against Nebraska. Initial quick thoughts on the 2024 schedule and the new look Big Ten.
A wild 4 weeks to end the year. You're in Wisconsin. You're on the West Coast in Los Angeles.
There's
You're
a
on the
bye
East.
week in between 2 road games, I
Oh,
believe.
Between the road games there is?
Yeah, I think that's the Big Ten rule, is that if you have to go west, then you get a bye week right out, or you're at home, something like that.
So their bye week isn't until after week.
They have 2 bye weeks. I didn't put them in the schedule, which I probably
okay.
should have, but I can look it up right now while we discuss this.
Is that a new thing, having
Yeah.
2 bye weeks?
Yeah.
Because of the scheduling stuff?
The travel that would involve. What's the biggest game that pops out to you? I mean, there's 2 pretty apparent ones, but what's
The biggest
What's
game-
the key game right away? Would you say?
I think that Ohio State is the one right away that we're going to get a good indication of what this team is. Because, again, Illinois State, I mean, Troy's a freaking good team. I mean, they're a great
I was going to say Iowa State.
Iowa State, despite what happened in Memphis.
Like, that's going to be the
Rocco
difference
Cook,
between winning 8 games and 7 games.
That's a good barometer.
7
in
or 6.
September, yeah, for both teams.
It's true. I only say that Ohio State's a good test because Iowa State is always a game that is going to be like, no matter how good or bad either team is going to be, that's going to be a close game. And so you almost can't like gauge a season off of what happens in the Cy-Hawk game. Ohio State's just the one where it's like, all right, now we know what this team is and kind of what their identity is going to be, if they're going to be a team that can hang with the best teams in the Big
I think
Ten.
Washington will be deceptive because I think they lose all the NFL receivers. They lose whoever Penix, because they could be like have a major drop off like TCU level, even though they still won. I don't know how many games they won this year, but just saying they might not be that national title contender like they are this year.
I'll be interested to see what Minnesota's like. With Darius Taylor will be back. It sounds like they've got a new DC hired, Rutgers linebackers coach. But Max Brosmer is coming in as a transfer quarterback out of New Hampshire, and he's one of the, what's the FCS version of the Heisman, the Peyton?
Is that what it is? Yeah, the Peyton Award.
He's a finalist for that, and he's really, really good quarterback at New Hampshire. So we'll see what Minnesota brings to the table. They got Floyd after all. Jonathan Smith, the new head coach at Michigan State, he's bringing in at least 2, if not 3 different transfer quarterbacks that are going to shake stuff up. David Braun, that is his program, fully and thoroughly in Evanston against Northwestern. Year 2 with Luke Fickell in Wisconsin. You saw them against LSU. Tanner Mordecai was healthy, and he was cooking early in that game against the Tigers. UCLA is going to be UCLA. Maryland's going to have a new quarterback, and then Nebraska. Again, we'll see what this Raiola kid can do.
Look at this Big Ten schedule. It almost looks like it, and this is way too early. I'm just
we're doing this in
forecasting,
January. Yeah.
But the toughest game or the easiest games look like maybe Michigan State with a brand new head coach and Maryland with a brand new quarterback. And
Michigan State's going to be interesting.
Yeah, I don't know how that's
going to
go.
be an interesting game. But lovely campus though in East Lansing.
At the same time, Washington had been strong for several years now. Ohio State is bringing in, I forget honestly who they just brought in, the quarterback.
Who?
Ohio State.
Just brought in Will Howard from Kansas State.
Okay, Will Howard, Kansas State.
That's an
that's what I'm saying.
Exciting pick.
Yeah,
I mean, they're going to lose
Marvin Harrison
and Agumba, and yeah, we'll see.
Nebraska,
it's January.
I'm going to predict Nebraska again is going to be significantly better when next year when they get into the second year of the Matt Rule era. But I think it's a sneaky tough schedule. It's not one of the ones in the Big Ten that you look at as the toughest, but for this Iowa team, I think it's going to be a tough one.
No Michigan, no Oregon, no USC. But yeah, I mean those are 5 tough road games.
Yeah, this is not a schedule where you can just rely on your defense to win you ball games. They need just so much more production out of their offense. Looking at some of these games, I mean, they're not getting to double-digit wins again with this schedule if they play offense like they did this year. I really do. I mean, they have got some tough games early even. I mean, Iowa State's going to be good. Troy is
big Troy guy.
I mainly just see it because we have a former colleague from WOI in Des Moines who's a Troy grad and follows them. But they won 11 games this year. Like, they're a dang good football team, and so I would be nervous about Troy coming to Kinnick Stadium. That could be an easy trap game for the Hawkeyes. That Troy will give them a pretty good test.
What are the bold predictions? We'll go that real quick before we take a break. Bold predictions just based on either the schedule or who's back or just one big thing that you think is going to be something to follow come fall 24.
Oh, and you want to start?
Give you time to think. I haven't been thinking.
I wrote this one down, and I still been going back and forth like with my bold prediction. I want to say Cade's going to play a full healthy year.
That's your bold prediction?
Yeah.
I hate that that's bold.
Yeah, wow.
But I mean, that's kind of the hope, right?
Yeah.
Is that's where we are. The guy coming off 2 big injuries who got banged up in the fall camp too. Like that's kind of a goal. Is just let's get you through 12, 13, whatever games, get you through a full season.
Mm-hmm. I almost want to do like a positive, like a negative bold prediction and a positive bold.
Best case scenario, worst case scenario. Yeah.
My worst case scenario one is that this team fights for bowl eligibility at 6-6.
I was just going to say my
with
negative
the defense
pick was that this team doesn't make a bowl game. I mean, I see some of these games on the schedule, and I'm like, as much as it is, not exactly a murderer's row of games, it's a schedule with a lot of losable games if you're the Hawkeyes, and you, in a world where they don't take a big jump on offense next year, there are a lot of games on the schedule that you could lose and maybe be close to that 6-win barrier.
Even year to year, when you have so many one-loss games like Iowa did this year and last year, I mean, just football, the law, one possession, like the law of averages is like you're going to lose them at some point. Mm-hmm. And I know this team seems different, and it's just that when going gets tough, they find a way to win. But if they're not going to get better production on offense, which is in part my bold prediction, if Cade's going to stay healthy, I think the offense is going to start cooking to that 100 in the nation, maybe 90. That'd be perfect. But so many winnable games, but so many losable games too. So
Yeah.
I agree with that.
My positive, bold prediction would be that they will go into the Big Ten championship week with a chance at making the college football playoff. Basically, if you win this game, you're in the CFP.
I can see that. That's the weird thing about this team, the wide variety of thing I can see go, and it's so
defense.
early.
And I think Reese will be a heck of a punter, but that's, and we'll
Another
get
big
into that in
factor.
the 23 review, like your best field position weapon is gone. And I wonder how much that'll, especially as this offense finds its
best.
footing early, it'll be super, super interesting to see. I think my bold prediction would be they win one of those big road games, i.e. Ohio State or UCLA or Washington. I think we could probably agree those are their 3 toughest games maybe.
Yeah,
I think they win
100%.
I think they win one of those.
It has been a few years, Iowa usually upsets someone and then gets upset by someone that you, quote unquote, they should have won.
Yeah.
This year, I feel like it was all chalk.
That's been the big narrative is you play
Yeah.
3 ranked teams, you get shut out 92-0, whatever it is. We won't need to rehash the numbers even though I just did. That's because that goes against what happens with Iowa. And I think that's why people have been less aggressive, at least to this extent now, because we've seen those instances where the Iowa way works. And we've talked about this quite a bit of just like, if they can get it to be a 14-13 game, they'll win that game. But if they don't get exactly the formula they need to go, whether it's by turnovers or whatever it may be, people in Indy saw 26-0 and thought, yeah, well, they just had the fumble there as they were driving, and then the weird call and the Deacon fumble. Like, well, that was a close, even coming out of Columbus last year, where it was 55-10 or whatever it was. They're like, I've talked about it too, because it's kind of what I saw. Like, that defense was just out there too long, and things get out of hand. They know how to win those games. It's just now they've been in a spot where the offense has had so much attrition that there's no way they can even hold on to that, and then it just really falls out the backside in a big way. And that's been, I think, the real disappointment where you've seen so much more anger from the fan base is that these games, they always feel like they have a chance because there's that Forensian formula that they can figure out a way to win these games ugly. They've gone ugly the completely other way, and that's been a really tough thing. But again, if you get that offense healthy, you find those spots again maybe. So those are our bold predictions. Brought to you by the caucus and winter weather. We'll take a quick break. We've already revisited 23 a little bit. We'll do that a little more and flesh things out and put a bow on it after the break.
Better sleep means better mornings. Start your morning waking up on a Restonic mattress. At Corcoran Furniture, we are Delaware County's largest Restonic mattress dealer. We have great prices on Ashley furniture and the largest selection of Restonic mattresses, featuring the marvelous middle, giving you more support where you need it so you can sleep soundly. And it's made for you right here in Iowa. So if it's a crossword, coffee, or the morning news, let Corcoran Furniture help you start your morning off right. Visit Corcoran Furniture in Manchester or shop online at CorcoranFurnitureManchester.com.
All right, so 2023 ends on the first day of 2024 with a 35-0 loss in the bowl game to a freshman quarterback and Tennessee. Kirk Ferentz does not shy away from the fact that he's an optimist and he wants to look on the bright side, and that's what he was exactly doing after the game.
Yeah, just really proud of our football team. Disappointing today. It never feels good after a loss. Can't remember one. And, if you do this, compete, anytime you go out there, it could go this way. The game is humbling, always has been, always will be. But I got to just encourage everybody to step back. It's a 10-win season, Big Ten West champs. A lot of really good moments, and these guys have really overcome a lot of adversity and a lot of unique challenges. And those are things that really serve them well moving forward as they go into their adult lives. And for the guys coming back, we'll build off this. But just really proud of everybody.
I don't know if it stems from, I think the exchange was just last year with Eichholt when David asked him something about the offense, and he goes, well, we won 10 games last year. And that became such an eye roll thing for the fans. it sounded like it was the same reaction to that. Like I consider myself a bit of an optimist too. Like I appreciate that, like after what just happened on the field, that you can go, hey, like there's a lot of good things that happened, and this team, ran into a tough spot, but look at everything we did over the last 3-4 months since August, everything like that. But what did you guys think about the initial comments there, and as we get into our review, what did you think about the season?
So that was after his opening statement.
Sure.
So like that wasn't even a question. But no, I agree with you. I kind of see both sides of that. Well, we won 10 games, and I'm happy about it. And then I look at and I watch a lot of other college football. I listen to podcasts and stuff. The Big Ten West was super down this year. Like there's no other way to say it. Wisconsin was the next best team. They had like 7 wins. They were 7-6. But all the teams you thought were going to be on a next level, like Illinois, they had a down year from what we thought. Yep. We thought Luke Fickell in Wisconsin might jump up. Like Iowa won it with 2 weeks left in the season. So you have to give that a little bit too. It's 10 wins. Every time you played a ranked team at the end of the season who finished ranked, I mean, like you mentioned before the break, it was a shutout because you couldn't move the ball. So when you weigh both sides, it's like, yeah, you won 10 games. You won those games against the quote-unquote weaker teams, so you should celebrate that. At the same time, moving forward, you got to realize this offense needs to change if you want to compete again with the ranked teams, because the way you did it in the past, although it worked, I mean, the offenses were better then too. It's not, forget that. I mean, they had better talent on the receivers, McNutt, DJK. I mean, they had
even just a few years ago with Amir and Brandon Smith.
100%. Those guys were dudes. Amir's playing on Sundays.
Fenton Hawkinson were in that first year of Brian as offensive coordinator. It's like you had Stanley, you had Akram in the backfield who just would run around all over the place. You had NFL guys in the offensive line. You had NFL tight ends. Yeah, this year there's, on top of injuries, just young guys. That's when you've got a developmental program that wants to wait and play these guys when they're juniors and seniors, and you have to throw them in when they're freshmen and sophomores. Yeah, you're watching the growing pains, and that can be, as we saw, both on the stat sheet and sometimes just the eye test. That's tough.
I do like to think that Kirk is smart enough to be realistic about why this team has been able to win games in the last few years, and that is because of strictly and solely his defense, and that his offense is doing nothing to help him win games. And so now that he does not have any blood relation to the person who's going to be running the offense, I hope that he's able to take a more realistic approach to some of the things that need to change, or making moves that will be able to help this offense move forward in a direction where they can be at least somewhat respectable and are not the laughing stock of the country. And that's at least going to move them in something of a positive direction.
I'd be interested to see too, because he did mention too, leading up to the bowl game, we heard from the coaches that Deacon has played well. I mean, he's statistically one of the worst D1 quarterbacks out there that at least has played so far. I wonder how much of that was just coach speak, trying to build up your guys, and how much they believe, because they are coaches and the programs are like tunnel vision when you're in it, So I wonder how much they're stepping back and looking, wow, this offense really was one of the worst, and how that can shift. Mm-hmm. We all see it. Go ahead.
Kirk talks to us about, hey, remember we won 10 games this year. I kind of hope that behind closed doors, that's maybe not the conversations that's happening, because I feel like he wants to put on a positive front to the public, so they keep things in perspective, or are able to not get out of control in terms of wanting to get people fired. But behind closed doors,
renew their season tickets, because that's the goal at the end of the day.
But behind closed doors, I hope that he's a little bit more of a realist and has those real conversations with his players and his staff, because those are things that need to happen, not just say hey, we won 10 games, no changes, we're good to go.
Yeah, I think it's partially that. I also think there's just never a scenario where he's going to throw a player under the bus. And Brian, I think when he answered that question of Deacon's played really good football, he's the guy who gives us the best chance to win. I think he asked a question about I don't know if it was directly about Marco. I know there was a question at some point during bowl prep about is there a package for Marco, and I think I think Deacon's an immensely likable guy. I mean, in our interactions, he's a super fun guy to talk to. His car became a narrative, which was super great. And I just don't think, I think that's their best approach of being like, getting asked these kind of like leading questions that are essentially like, why is Deacon Hill playing? That the only thing because they're not going to be like, yeah, I don't know what we're doing.
Well, to that point, like they should have had a package from Marco in the first quarter because you looked how effective he was. He was the leading rusher in the game.
I think there's probably absolutely a thing to say, like a wildcat package or a running package, because the passing still needed a little bit of work.
They did for Sam Laporta last year in the bowl game.
I know, boy, yeah. If you had a package for Sam Laporta, boy, you just started a whole message board thread there, man. It would have been nice to see.
Revisionist history. Like, it's easy for me to say that after Marco runs for 50 years. Who could predict that?
We'll talk more about the what-ifs in 23 and what can come out of no matter what the situation is. There's always a positive. But we did get to see Marco, and there's probably a big discussion about what his role is in the spring. But I just think this is a program that, and I don't have the direct quote from Kirk, but I believe he said it again during bowl prep, of like their number one priority with this program is creating better people and graduating guys and making them better men. He never says anything about winning football games. He says that's the goal of the game. You always want to go out and win, but he always says the number one point of the program is to develop good young men and get them to graduate. And I think that's, as much as that maybe like doesn't sit well with fans who want to compete, and they always want to win, but their priority is, do we have guys that, we saw it outside the locker room in Indy, where Robert Gallery's standing there, and that might have been the happiest Kirk was all night, just this big bear hug with Robert Gallery, and you still see the emotions of him. Somebody, I think it was Jack Leto from KCRG, asked him, what did it mean to you that Deacon, after getting pulled, goes over and immediately slaps Marco on the back and is coaching him up, and he gets emotional about that. Like,
Jack had another question at the bowl game. I think he's trying to make Kirk cry.
Well, it worked, but I think that's what it is all about for him. We want to win games. We've been able to do that despite all odds, but that's the stuff that we're able to do. We're able to create these situations where 20 years later, guys aren't, yeah, boy, that was rough. I really didn't enjoy college. Like, man, going back to Dejon Parker's tweet, Dejon Parker probably not going to be there next year. It sounds like he's moving on. But as soon as that Illinois game wins, a guy who hasn't played this year says, best decision of my life. And I think that's their priority. And I think that's why they talk about guys like Deacon in that way. Even if there's struggles on the field, like that's their priority.
That makes sense.
We want to make a great program where you feel loved and you can come back anytime and still feel part of it. Now, the people that want to win games again, they're going to maybe struggle with that, especially in the moment.
It's not only win games,
they're nothing. You be competitive, yeah, for sure.
No, their program is using that we're an elite football school. Their Twitter, that's what their persona is, and they're asking fans to donate thousands of dollars. Not only that, and to pay the players. So, like, I think balancing, obviously you want to have good people.
Sure.
Balancing that with, all right, well, now you get paid millions of dollars. We're paying thousands of dollars. I'm not, but fans are through the two different collectives. Like, it's good to say this is college sports, but it's really a business.
More and more every day.
So, I mean, it's, where does the line draw from, like, hey, it's just college sports, amateur, well, it's not amateur anymore, but it is college sports too. People are, that's why they're mad, is they're like,
it's hitting their pocketbooks more and more,
We you bring up Robert Gallery and you look at a team, not specifically the team from 20 years ago, but just in general, 20 years down the road, how much does a player or the fans or the coaches or whoever remember that Deacon Hill was an ineffective quarterback all season, or the amount of points that they score on offense? Are they actually remembering just the 10 wins or just the friends we made along the way, as we like to say? I don't know the answer to that, because maybe people will still be talking about this offense in 20 years as like, wow, that was a bad team. But I don't know. The thing that you also have to consider, though, comparing Robert Gallery to now, is that, like, the game has changed so much in the last 20 years, and we can't just get by sometimes with saying, like, well, this is a good program, a good place for people to be and get an education. Like, that's nice if that was still the way that college football worked, but with the amount of money getting thrown around out there, if you want to keep winning football games, you have to treat it more and more like a business, because that's what it's turned into.
Sure. The thing I keep thinking on, one of the great what-ifs in the history of Hawkeye football, certainly in the last 15 to 20 years, is what if Stanzi doesn't go down against Northwestern, and the potential of that 09 team. They probably go 12-0, and they probably play At the very least, they play in a Rose Bowl against that Oregon team that was really good that Ohio State played against, or maybe they get Bama or Texas in the national title game. So there's always what ifs there. But because Stanzi went down, Iowa goes to the Orange Bowl, gets a major bowl win, the first one they've had in decades, and Chris Myers asked Stanzi, from Middle America, what's it like to represent that group of American people? And Ricky Stanzi becomes a folk hero because he hears that and just hears the Team America World Police song. And people talk about, that's why he was the intro video this year, saying if you don't love it, leave it. He becomes that, and you get that moment because he got hurt. There's some positive or some sort of like light that comes out of every struggle. In 2023, Iowa has a historically bad offense, and it allows Torrey Taylor, who was already beloved, to win a Ray Guy Award, set an NCAA single-season record, and gets the biggest cheer in the crowd, gets Aussie chants all the time, and has this life change. He will make millions of dollars for the next decade because he played on a team that struggled on offense. And again, he's well known now, and Reese gets to come in and have a college education because of this guy. There's kind of there's beauty in that struggle because Iowa now punting is winning is a slogan. And I know people, would you trade that for a Big Ten championship?
Yes.
Maybe. But what a cool storyline is that Iowa gets to celebrate this incredible story about a kid who his dad basically told him, you don't want to be the guy at the pub in 25 years wondering what if. He comes to Iowa, and because he comes to Iowa in this age, becomes a legend and gets his face on the wall, gets a national award, and we will talk about in 20 years, what are we going to talk about? Boy, that offense was tough. Torrey, do you remember Torrey against Wisconsin just booming those? Like, that's the kind of stuff I feel like fans, they'll roll their eyes at how bad the offense was, but they'll remember stories like that of Cooper against Minnesota, or they'll remember Torrey, or they'll remember Jay, even though we don't have a ton of video evidence of Jay's 171 tackles because they're all just business-like. That's the stuff people will hold on to.
Each time I post either one of my highlight reads on either Facebook or on YouTube from the game afterwards, there's people, mostly from the opposing fan bases, like rolling their eyes at me for like, oh, wow, let's hype up the punter. OMG, how hysterical.
Damn right we're going to hype up the punter.
I'm like, have you been to Iowa? Like, these guys want the punting highlights.
I was walking around the stadium before because one of my friends lives near Orlando, and there were Tennessee fans laughing about someone, like, punting is winning, like just scoffing at it, like, what a ridiculous.
Fight him, Mike? Defend our honor?
Yeah, I punched him right in the face. So.
All right, well,
Like a true Australian.
Dade County authorities are looking for
So-
it. Oh, that's Miami, I guess.
So let's get into this because I teased it. The trivia question for you guys.
Oh, yeah.
All right, I don't have any graphics for it, but since Iowa ended the season with 2 shutouts, which you never want to do, but obviously a Michigan Big Ten title game and the Citrus Bowl, when was the last time Iowa got shut out in 2 consecutive games? What year?
Gosh, because that Penn State shutout was like their first in
In a while.
Since 2000 or 99?
Yeah, since maybe 99, I think.
Would it be like 96 or 97?
Further back.
Is it in the 90s?
No.
Yeah. Really? Mid-70s.
81.
Before mid-70s.
What?
Were our parents alive?
My mom was, and my dad.
71.
I'm going to say 58, 59.
66. They got shut out 3 weeks in a row. 7-0 against Wisconsin week 3, 35-0 against Purdue, and 17-0 against Minnesota. They also ended the season at Miami and lost 44-0. So 4 shutouts. Those are bad teams back in the 60s.
Yeah, Miami in the 60s? I saw the beginning of the U.
The last time they lost, they had 2 shutouts in a single season before this year, was 1978 when they lost in week 2 against Iowa State 31-0 and Michigan 34-0 in week 8. So it's
That
been
was
a
the last
long
time they
time.
had 2 shutouts in a single season.
In a single, at least according to Wikipedia, which is my source.
That's what the
That's
show's
pretty
based off of.
incredible. Good fact finding. That is an
really
incredible
good, yeah.
stat. Wow.
Yeah.
I thought I was good for that bowl game stat that I had about first shutout in a bowl game since, what was it, the 81 Rose Bowl, I think?
Yeah.
Man, that's good data.
Tough notes to end
And
the football pod on.
So the positive is, I mean, if you can think of positive, those teams won like 2 or 3 games. Like Iowa won 10
That is
games, and they got shut out 3 times.
Yeah.
The Iowa's down stretch here in the last 3 years where the offense have just kept going.
Yeah.
10-4, 8-5, 10-4.
Somebody
2 division titles.
Somebody tweeted afterwards, The 2023 Hawkeye football season has been a sociology experiment out of the Harvard University. Thank you for your input.
I mean, I spent a few games in the stands, and it was like the entire game, and at the end, we're all celebrating because the Hawkeyes won. It's like, it truly is. It's just, it was one of the most bizarre seasons, and I think if you're, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I had a couple of things before we close out the show. You can finish your point.
I'm grading it. Obviously, the offense gets a fat F because they were statistically the worst. The defense has to have an A.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think overall you give them like a B minus, C plus, something.
I
like
was
that.
leaning B minus. I feel like defense is A. I almost, again, maybe optimist and not wanting to fail anybody. Like offense kind of incomplete just because you lose Cade so early, and then you lose Luke, or you lose Luke before that. Then you lose Eric. Offensive line's beat up. Caleb Johnson goes from not playing a snap at Wrigley to winning the West, and the running back room was so beat up, and the wide receivers were all, Deontay was hurt and all that. So I kind of lean incomplete just because, again, in a season of what ifs, you wonder, boy, what if Cade just doesn't even hurt that quad at practice and he goes into the season healthy? And there's just so much stuff. And then obviously special teams gets an A, I would say. But yeah, B minus
100%.
felt like the way to go. It's tough to give a C plus to a 10-win team. You know what I mean?
That is true. That's why I'd say, yeah, in the B level.
I'd almost be, oh boy, it's tough overall to give. I was going to maybe push back just a bit on giving special teams an A just because kicking was a bit suspect at times this year. I mean, Drew Stevens, even before he got yanked in the Nebraska game, he had his struggles from the kicking game.
But then they had 2 games that they walk off with kicks. You know what I mean? Or
I
get
know,
close to it.
yeah.
It's so tough.
I'd say that overall special teams is close to a B plus, A minus territory just because the kicking was not a work of art at times this season. But overall, yeah, I think the team gets a solid B minus in my book just because of how bad the offense was. The defense can only pull out that grade so much. A couple of the points I wanted to make first off was, number one, I mean, good for Marco Linus that he gets to go into this offseason being like the Iowa hero that everybody's
Joey
talking
Labus,
about.
2024, yeah.
He's Alex Padilla for so much of the Spencer Petras era. That he's the guy that like, oh man, yeah, we got to see more of Marco. I just want to encourage people to cool it a little bit with the Marco talk. As much as he did look good on a lot of those runs, I don't want to totally sell out and say, yeah, he should have been starting in front of Deacon because it's like, I mean, Marco, I think maybe had 1 completed pass in that game.
He was 2 of 7 for 4 yards. He missed Kamari on a really easy screen.
Just think for a second about yes, he had more maybe mobility, more scrambling possibilities there, but what if he was less accurate than Deacon? What if he threw more interceptions than Deacon if you put him in some of those games? Those are games that we could have lost if there are maybe 1 or 2 more interceptions. So we just don't know what Marco is as a quarterback yet, and we won't know until we see a few more snaps out of him. So, as much as yes, it'd be fun to maybe see a little bit more of him, we still don't quite know what he is as a passer. We know what he has as a runner. He's got great mobility, obviously, but we don't know quite yet what he is.
I think the inverse to that is if Cade does go down again, just I'm not predicting it or anything, but just if say he can't get healthy or he's having trouble with his legs, I want to see Marco in that role because I already know what Deacon Hill gives you.
Yes.
And unfortunately, it's interceptions and fumbles. And in this offense, you can't turn the ball over. Maybe Marco does the same thing, though.
Yeah. This was not an endorsement for Deacon, by the way. Much as I love the guy, that was not me saying, it's got to still be Deacon. That's just me saying, don't give this guy the Heisman yet. Yeah, we still don't know quite what he is.
I will say you couldn't have asked for a better response from Deacon after the interception. I went into that game thinking, I would love to see Nico get a touchdown. His final game, sputters out like that, and interception. On 4 straight third downs, Deacon hit his guys in the hands, and they dropped it.
Yeah.
I know that was I think it was Michigan State when he first got thrown in there. There were a ton of drops. Just to your point, don't get too high or too low about watching Marco scramble like crazy and be very effective in that. Also, don't overreact to looking at, just don't let stat lines tell you everything. Obviously, sometimes they do tell the whole story, i.e. Iowa's total offense and things like that. But Deacon responded about as good as you can. Just there were some drops.
Yeah.
Obviously, I mean the pocket security and the fumbles are brutal. But Marco flashed, and the truth is somewhere in the middle. And I think what they do with QB2 going forward is somewhere in the middle because both have shown. I mean, Deacon's a steady a steady hand and a good leader, even if he is a little turnover prone. He's a likable guy, and Marco clearly has some playmaking ability.
I just saw one guy on Twitter, at least, he was making a case that like Marco should be QB1 to start next season.
Okay, guy.
Okay, yeah, that's what you were. Okay, now I agree with you.
I mean,
That was my biggest takeaway from this
You have to
35
have-
loss.
He was like, hey, Cade's banged up. He's not going to be what he seems to be. We should sell out on Marco as like the guy moving forward, which I was like, all right, that's certainly an opinion. But
That's a take. What I was gonna say was Deacon was not supposed to be here, and I feel bad for the kid because seems like an awesome dude, but coming in, his other offer was like Fordham.
He was going to go to Fordham.
Yeah, and he's the starting quarterback for a Big Ten school for majority of the season. He's put in a tough position for his progression in his college career. So I feel bad for him, especially when, like you said, the drops all season were an issue. And if some of those third downs were completed, I think it's not as bad against Tennessee, like the score line.
It changes a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, the one was to Caleb where it was like a 3rd and 20, and I think they'd either taken a penalty or he'd taken a sack. But at least would have, again, in a field position game, you're a little closer, and just it's what ifs. The whole season's built on a foundation of what if.
my other kind of bold prediction / regular prediction that I wanted to ask you guys about after you mentioned Stanzi, I thought about this. I have an opinion. Who do you think is the hype video guy next year?
Ooh.
I've got strong gallery vibes. I feel like he's been around the campus a few times this year, mostly with the Hall of Fame stuff, getting his name on the Ring of Honor. I'm like, seems like Gallery could be that guy in the hype video next year.
I'd say Dallas Clark, but
was
he's
just
on the
gonna say-
sideline for every game.
He's got nothing to
You
do,
can't-
it seems.
Yeah, you can't have the guy on the hype video be the guy who's standing near where the hype videos play.
No, I wouldn't be surprised if it was like Laporta. He's like, I think last night they said he had the most receiving touchdowns from a rookie tight end,
Receptions for sure. He has 3 receptions.
other than like Mike Ditka, and then one other guy that I'm now blanking
Good
on.
Gronk.
Yeah, I think so. So like that's just insane.
It's been so fun being somebody who has still a lot of Michigan connections to see them level Laporta the way they have and love Jack, and then have the season they're having on top of it. Like that's been super, super cool. I know you're a Packer fan, but I bet there's party.
Yeah, I don't hate the Lions. I know Lions fans hate the Packers, but I grew up with Vikings and Bears, and I didn't know any Lions fans. So
the Lions were kind of the
I'm
outlier.
actually rooting for them in the NFC because I, other than the Packers, I'm just assuming the Packers won't make it. If they make it past this week, they will lose next week in San Fran.
There you go.
Yeah. Yeah, go Lions. If the Packers lose.
Man, I'm trying to think who would be great because Kittle's already done a.
I was going to say, Kittle did it 2 years ago. So that's why I was thinking Laporta, just get another tight end.
Did Anger do one? Pat Anger did one. I feel like.
I don't
It might
remember
not have been
seeing that.
on cam, but he's done voiceovers for them. Didn't he just did the pre-Big Ten championship one, I think. Because it was at Lucas Oil.
I don't have a frame of reference for even who's done one pre.
Well, these are fairly new still.
Adrian Claiborne would be a good one.
Claiborne would be
He's
good.
very recognizable, and he just wrapped up in NFL
Just bring
career.
back Joe Evans. I mean, he's been your hype man, right? Like, would love to see that. I'm trying to think of I'm just trying to think of the dudes who are always like fiery on the sidelines and did stuff.
Mitch King.
Mitch King would be, oh man, Mitch King. If he's got to grow back the hair though. You got to have the long golden locks going. That'd be fun. Whoever it is, it'll be great. I think we'll be back in. I think I checked. I'm guessing spring practice, open spring practice will be April 13th. I think that's the second Saturday in April. So I'd imagine that'll be it. And that's when we'll, around that time, start diving back into football stuff, I imagine. Eye on the Hawks is going to, you guys are going to be doing some basketball stuff still, I believe, right?
Yeah, we're going to do once a week. I think we settled on a Wednesday. Not this Wednesday, though, because I'll be getting ready for the caucuses. I need to work on that.
I forgot to talk about the caucuses. So we still have
Next episode.
We still have an hour and a half of caucus stuff to go into. So if you guys could just sit tight for us.
Eye on the caucuses.
Man, I'm so excited to start saying on shows tonight, 1 week until the Iowa caucuses, because I've been saying 7 and 6 and 5. So there we go. So Eye on the Hawks will continue. Of course, keep following on social media, the YouTube channel for the streams and whatnot. And we'll keep everything going here with everything black and gold. Maybe we'll get into some more basketball stuff as we get going there. These guys will certainly. I'll jump back in as needed. And it's been a fun ride. We've laid a good foundation in 23 as we get into 24. So thanks, everybody, for watching and supporting. See you next time on